the end of the day, Steelers walk out of East Rutherford, New Jersey, with a 34-32 victory over the New York Jets. Ultimately, the difference maker being a 60-yard field goal by Chris Boswell with just under a minute left to go. I think for the Steelers, you're happy to walk away here with a win. I think there's still a lot of question marks surrounding this team in multiple different spots. But I think that the fact that you can grind out a win like this, when really not everything goes to plan. Obviously, you had Aaron Rodgers having a very good game in his first outing as a Pittsburgh Steeler. DK Metcalf performed super well. But I think there's definitely a lot of question marks that kind of going to address over the course of this kind of reaction video. And we'll kind of go through it one by one. Again, ultimately, I think the offense played really well in this one. I think that's clear from that 34-point final score for this Steelers unit. Scoring over 30 points is something that I think as Steelers fans we're not really as accustomed to seeing. So anytime you can get that amount of points, it's a really good day. Aaron Rodgers had a really good time slinging the rock. He had 4 touchdowns. DK Metcalf got on the board. I believe it was DK Metcalf, Jonnu Smith, Ben Skoranek, and Jalen Warren all catching, receiving touchdowns. Additionally, you had the likes of Calvin Austin having a really nice day. Didn't see a lot of Roman Wilson. Pat Fryermuth had a couple of nice grabs. Kenneth Gainwell was getting involved pretty nice. And so at least in terms of the air attack, especially with your new quarterback, with some new wide receivers, with some new receiving options just generally, I think that you had a really good result. Pass protection, I think, was definitely a point of question. Roger Jones did not have the best day. I know if you were on my stream, you heard me call him a turnstile a good bit. I think he gave up multiple sacks today. So I think he was a big question mark there. But that Jets front four was very good. You saw a whole bunch of blitzes as well. So Aaron Rodgers was pretty consistently under pressure, but the fact that we still were able to get ourselves in position to win was very good. And I think some of those concerns also carry over into the run game. I think that the run game was a little bit concerning as well, where it was another thing that it was just the running game wasn't perfect. We only had about 50-some yards. I feel like we really didn't necessarily try to run the ball as much as I'd hoped. And maybe that's just kind of in comparison to how often the Jets ran the ball and really ran the ball efficiently. We'll go over that in a second. But the run game was a little bit lacking. And again, I don't know if that's due to linemen getting up to speed. Obviously, with Troy Fatanu on that right-hand side, he's coming off of injury, so this will be his first kind of full-speed snaps in a little bit. This will be Broderick Jones' first season at left tackle. So you got Quinn going up against Quentin Williams and some members of that Jets defense. It would definitely be a tall order. But again, ultimately, definitely a lot to improve on there. On the defensive side of the ball, I think there's still a lot of questions there. Again, if you give up 32 points, especially with the most expensive defense in the league, there's got to be a lot of questions on that. I think the Steelers, failed brutally at stopping the run today. Breece Hall had over 100 yards. I think Justin Fields had close to 50. If you get outrushed by 130 yards over the course of a game, you really don't deserve to win it. But ultimately, Steelers able to find a way to win, which again, I think is the important part of this team and has been the kind of Steelers thing over the years. So again, that's just kind of a continued thought there. I think especially later in the game, I think the Steelers defense standing firm really twice. Once with under 6 minutes to go to allow the Steelers offense to get the ball back with an opportunity to put Boswell in position to take the lead was very big. And then on the Jets' kind of last chance drive, 4th and 3, Jalen Ramsey made a big play. There were a couple of big run stops in there. And ultimately, again, with that defense, you're trying to find ways to win. And as much as you'd like to see your TJ Watt, your Alex Highsmith, your Patrick Queens a little bit more involved, again, I think that just goes to how well schemed the Jets were versus in terms of those players not getting stats. And I think it's definitely frustrating from the perspective of a Steelers fan, because the Steelers absolutely did not play well on the defensive side of the ball. give up 400 yards, give up 32 points. That is certainly not a good situation to be in. But ultimately, if you can I don't want to say focus up when it matters, but that sounds like it makes the most sense. That's the big difference. And then I think what ended up making the difference today was the Steelers' special teams. Obviously, I've already mentioned Boswell absolutely drilling a 60-yard field goal with just about a minute left to play, ultimately being the difference maker, and just the Wizard of Oz being automatic is just something that we've come to expect at this point if you've watched the Steelers. Um, but ultimately, I think a big shout out as well for another play that completely changed the face of the game was after scoring a touchdown on the first play of the fourth quarter, the Steelers kickoff unit was able to force a fumble. So big shout out to Kenneth Gainwell for getting that forced fumble, and then Ben Skoranek for being in a great position to be able to dive on that football, get the Steelers to force a turnover and force the only turnover in this football game, and that was a huge, huge difference maker. Swung that game from a 9-point Steelers deficit to a 5-point Steelers advantage in just about a minute. And so that was a huge, huge moment in that game that really made a difference and turned that fourth quarter around. So now that gives us a little bit of a chance to dive into some of the statistics in this game. So I think Aaron Rodgers, very efficient, 22 of 30 for 244, 4 touchdowns, ultimately 218 yards after you take away those 4 sacks, which again, big concern there. I think, again, if you're looking at these stats as well, ton of respect out to Justin Fields. 16 for 218 through the air, and then another 12 for 48 and 2 touchdowns on the ground is an absolutely huge result for the Jets. And again, a lot of respect to Aaron Glenn and that Jets unit. They were very good. If you look at that Steelers side, 30 times passing, 20 times rushing. I think some of that came down to working in some longer yardage scenarios, especially after rushing not really working on early downs. Obviously, only rushing for 2.7 yards a carry is never something that you want to see. Obviously, Caleb Johnson only seeing 1 carry. Rodgers, not only technically having 1 carry, but that was really just on an attempted scramble. So no design runs for Aaron Rodgers. But ultimately not that bad. I think Steelers did a good job at spreading the ball out. 7 targets for Metcalf, 6 for Austin. Jonnu Smith got 6 targets, ended up with only 5 grabs for 15 yards. It was a decent kind of short yardage option. Ben Skoranek got on the board. Jalen Warren got on the board. Pat Freiermuth got on the board for 3 catches, 28 yards. So that was very good to see. Garrett Wilson looked very good today. 7 catches for 95 yards. The Steelers secondary had a bit of a problem containing him as well in some of those third and medium situations, because I think the Jets, being so strong running the ball, gave them a lot of third and short options to be able to move forward, gives them an opportunity to run on a third and short to run a Justin Fields QB sneak, allow him to kind of evade and run a little bit. But even on some of those third and longer situations, I feel like the Steelers really struggled when Fields was able to extend that play, was able to pretty easily find the likes of Tyler Johnson a couple of times. Again, it was Garrett Wilson a lot. Was able to spread the ball around to Josh Reynolds, to Jeremy Ruckert, Mason Taylor, that 20-yard gain. I remember a little bit more specifically as some of those long plays. And every Jets receiver that caught the ball had a long of more than 10 yards, which was really a lot due to Justin Fields being able to extend plays with his legs was the big thing. I think ball security was a little bit of a concern for the Steelers. I think we were able to recover a lot of them, which was good. You definitely don't want to see 2 fumbles just generally. Obviously, we recovered all of our own and recovered the 1 fumble from Xavier Gibson. But that was the big thing there. In terms of tackle leaders, Chuck Clark, surprisingly, was in the game the most on the Steelers side of the ball. Also good to see Highsmith, Queen, and Thornhill in there, picking up with, of course, Clark and Thornhill being new players, at least at the starting level. Darius Slay was also in there. T.J. Watt, when he was able to get to the rusher, was able to really kind of wreck house. Obviously picked up 2 tackles for loss in that one and a pass deflected. I think on the Jets side of the ball, Quincy Williams, I think, played really well. So did Jamie Sherwood. Quinn Williams, I think, did a really good job at stopping the ball. And again, keep an eye on this Jets defense to be really good throughout the season because I think, that secondary, I think, could be a little bit questionable, but especially in terms of stopping the run. And, in terms of, potentially hitting the passer as well, getting pressure on the quarterback, that could be really, really fun to watch. Kick returns, not too much to talk about there. There is not too much going on. Not too much punting in this game either. The Jets, I think, maybe punted the ball once, but that was about it. Obviously, Boswell, automatic 2 of 2 from field goals. One from 56 and the other from 60, so he was spot on. Corliss Waitman didn't have a bad day either. And Nick Folk, 2 of 2 from both extra points and from field goals. But I think, ultimately, moving into next week, we do go up against the Seattle Seahawks. So I think a couple of points of improvement that you'd want to see. You'd want to see the Steelers run the ball more effectively. It's great if we can have Aaron Rodgers continue to throw for 4 touchdowns every game. But that's probably not something that we can realistically expect. We'll probably run into teams that, may have a little bit more depth at corner. Maybe, probably we'll have a team or two that'll be able to get to the quarterback more effectively. So we need to make sure that we establish the run. And especially that we're able to stop the run, especially when you're in a division with the Baltimore Ravens, with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, and I think to a lesser extent the Cincinnati Bengals with Chase Brown, who had a really nice season last year. Stopping the run is going to be incredibly important. Just that way you don't have to commit extra bodies there. You're not biting on that run that little bit more, and you're able to have more success. You're able to hold that opposing offense to fewer than 28 points, which I think should be the end goal of this defense. But yeah, of course, next week we are playing Seattle, so it gives DK Metcalf the opportunity to potentially get his get back. Ultimately, we'll have to see exactly what happens. But your Pittsburgh Steelers starting off 1-0 with a win over the New York Jets, and that is the bottom line and is the important part. So until next time, hopefully y'all enjoyed. Definitely be sure to subscribe down below if you haven't done so already. I'm going to try to at least do one stream every week. If it's not a Steelers game, I'm trying to do a Monday Night Football game. We'll see what all gets mixed in there. And hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.